What a stupid way to build a spacecraft. A story by user happycatsforasadgirl. Humans, Renthax thought, were a very strange set of creatures. Around it, the hangar was buzzing with activity. Fuel and oxygen was being loaded into a fleet of ships. Caches of food and small weapons were being examined by groups of humans that chatted animatedly while they worked. And a scientist was verbally transferring information to a small group of pilots in one corner. Renthax observed all the bustling forms and wondered again how these ridiculous creatures had ever made it out of their own solar neighborhood. The alien's current job was a perfect example, it reflected. Renthax's evolutionary branch was incredibly sensitive to quantum fluctuations in the local environment, and could detect the minute changes that even the best human machines couldn't yet perceive. Once humans had learned about this sensory ability, they had immediately requested a member of Renthax's kin observe all fueling activities, and would sometimes delay entire missions until one was present. The reason for this, as one human explained when Renthax asked, was that human-made hyperdrives had an alarming tendency to unstart during fueling and priming. Apparently, unstarting means the drive trying to move the craft along a thrust vector perpendicular to reality, which results in all nearby matter rapidly converting into incandescent plasma. The only warning of this was a cascade of quantum detanglement in the fuel cores, followed by a quiet clunk, and then all else was a violent burst of physics. However, if detanglement was caught early, then countermeasures could avert the crisis, and so Renthax's job was to observe the hangar preparation activities and warn the Earthlings of any unexpected quantum events. Stupid, irresponsible, counter to every evolutionary drive for safety and propagation. And yet, somehow it was working. These foolhardy creatures from Sol had been placing down settlements on every planet that could host them, and machines on the ones that couldn't. Doing things that didn't make sense, and then doing them again when it went wrong the first time. Humans seemed to be pushing into the universe on stubbornness alone. It was almost irritating to a properly logical species, and was definitely a bit scary. Something was calling the species outwards. Something that... The crunching feeling of detanglement cut across Renthax's thoughts. Then another. Tears in the quantum fabric, tiny but growing, rippling outwards. But where? The far end of the room. But which craft? Renthax concentrated, letting its biology work. It was the freighter. It was the freighter, the one by the scientists and pilots. The ripples were growing fast, spreading through the hyperdrive. Renthax jabbed hard at the relevant spacecraft symbol on the UV display in front of it, and immediately a siren blared through the hangar, while the affected craft was bathed in red light. Humans scattered away from it as emergency systems kicked in, blasting liquid helium into the engine's pipework and rapidly dumping charged particles. Renthax's hide prickled as the waves of EM radiation flowed past it, but the protocol was working. The cascade of detanglement slowed, and the running of the humans took on a more directed quality as they stopped their initial flight and headed for emergency posts. One Earthling turned off the siren as the hangar settled into the procedure. Renthax relaxed too, familiar now with the periodic panic that came with proximity to people. When it noticed something. The quantum disruption in the core had slowed, but it hadn't stopped. Normally, the chain of detanglement stopped as soon as helium was applied, but right now there was still a steady collapse of wave functions fizzling in the cores. Suddenly, there was a burst of detanglement, a fresh hole torn in the quantum fabric as the cascade impossibly restarted. Renthax lurched at the panel again, ready to hammer the alarm function, when there was a deafening crack from the stricken ship. Hissing, freezing mist was flying from the pipe leading to the hyperdrive. Somehow the helium pipe connection had failed, and the propulsion system was leaking. The pressure had suddenly given out, and freed from cryogenic effects, the cascade was beginning again. 2 or 3 sirens began at once, echoing through the whole station now rather than just the hangar. People scattered everywhere, following a different set of protocols for immediate evacuation. Within seconds, the area was clear, and only Renthax remained. Its body hadn't evolved for speed, and it had witnessed an unstarting event from a distance before. Even with emergency pods, it was unlikely many would survive. Renthax sat instead, and tried to make peace with the idea of returning to Stardust. There was the sound of feet running from across the room. Renthax turned in surprise, and to its shock saw 3 Earthlings running towards the unstarting ship. The foolish things had ignored the evacuation order, and were trying one last futile action. They ran into the freezing cloud of boiling helium, groping blindly, as their limited range of visible wavelengths didn't allow them to see through it. The others found the pipe, and one stripped off a garment to wrap as an insulator before they all grabbed it and guided it back into place. Within seconds, the creatures had restored the majority of the flow, flooding the hyperdrive with gas again by holding the pipe with their weight. Renthax was already ambulating towards them. It knew the typical human lung capacity, and wasn't sure it would make it in time. The evaporating helium had formed a dense cloud, and humans required more oxygen than they were currently breathing that close to the leakage. The detanglement cascade was slowing, moving backwards from the tipping point. but the smallest human was already losing balance. It fell just as Renthax arrived, who did its best to catch the human's body on its low, bulky form. With supreme effort, it dragged the Earthling out of the helium cloud as it weakly started saying a bunch of words like humans enjoy doing. Renthax ignored it and entered the cloud again, even as the light gas was beginning to dissipate. The detanglement was holding steady now, collapses happening in a regular rhythm rather than a mad tumble. Renthax dragged the second human out, the injured one, who had fallen while the first was rescued. Thankfully, it was still breathing. The quantum event was slowing now, near stopping. The final human was holding the cryopipe against the inlet, its body forming ice crystals from the effort of contact. Blasts escaped from the imperfect seal, but enough of the freezing liquid was making it into the core to calm the quantum foam. Renthax could observe the final human was fading, even their larger mass failing in the choking cloud, their face contorted with the effort of holding the pipework in place. There was nothing the alien could do to help. Its form was not built for this kind of work. Instead, it watched, feeling the atomic anger fading, and willing the human to keep their feet beneath him for just a few more seconds. With a cry, the human fell, its system finally giving out. The pipework instantly burst free, sending a blast of frigid helium into space. Renthax didn't know if it had been enough. And as it strained to pull the final Earthling back to a proper gas balance, it felt the core. The last of the helium drained through, the icy touch pulling atoms back to a lower energy potential. The cascade teetered on the edge, electron clouds whirling in decision. Renthax felt hands grab the human it was holding, all four of them moving away from the craft. And then it was over. Almost petulantly, a final wave function collapsed, and then the hyperdrive fell silent. Relief washed over Renthax so strongly, it took a few moments to realize the humans were looking to it to see what would happen. It flexed them the "everything's okay" sign, and they fell back with laughter and groans of relief. Above them, the sirens quietly shut off. Humans, Renthax thought, were a strange set of creatures. It was in a much larger hangar now, observing a larger set of ships, and had been assigned to a unit. This seemed to mean it followed the same set of humans around and helped them with fueling, the same ones it had been with during the emergency. Apparently, the humans had requested Renthax by name, which was strange as any of its kin could have done the job just as well. They had insisted it was given a medal as well, shaped silver pinned to ribbon and inscribed with human words. It was a silly thing, but Renthax really liked it for some reason. Just like humans, really. The strangest species Renthax knew. But somehow, in their stupid, reckless, and irresponsible way, Renthax really, really liked them. The hangar was alive with activity, and Renthax set to work. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Check out the description for the story, and join the Discord if you like. Consider supporting the channel and the author as well. It's a dangerous world out there, but remember to be brave and look up to seek the stars.